All right, welcome back to Close Up. You know, this couldn't have been easy. He came from nowhere to spark a revolution that no one saw coming and very nearly pulled off the greatest upset in modern political history. But now Bernie Sanders, albeit still an inspiration to many, is spending his days stumping for former rival Hillary Clinton. And we sat down with him this week.
Senator, good to see you, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you, Josh.
So how goes the revolution?
It goes well. I think what we're seeing all over this country is more and more people involved in the political process. We're seeing people running for school board, for city council, for state legislature, and that is exactly what this country needs. We need millions of people to demand that we have a government that represents all of us, not just the 1%. And the only way to bring that about is when people jump in and get involved in the political process.
For you, how has life changed since the convention, or actually a couple weeks before the convention, where you threw in with...
Well, it's obviously radically different. You know, I'm not running around the country giving 3 or 4 speeches a day. So I've begun to readjust to being a United States Senator from Vermont and getting involved in some of the important issues that we're dealing with in D.C.
No question about it. And you're well aware you had a lot of loyal support in this race. Yeah. And a lot of people were disappointed.
And especially here in New Hampshire. And let me just take this moment to thank the people of New Hampshire. We had so many volunteers, and we did so well here. And I just appreciate the kind of support we got here.
But there were a lot of people that were really disappointed and upset. You know this at the convention when you decided to hand the nomination to Hillary Clinton. Obviously, the numbers were what the numbers were. But what do you say to a voter that might do a silent protest by sitting out this November?
I think that's a mistake. I mean, people will do what they want to do. But from my own perspective, this is a nation and world in the midst of very serious crises. And what we have got to do is take a hard look at the 2 candidates who will likely, one of which will likely become president, either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. I think it would be a catastrophe for our country, and in fact the world, if Trump were elected president. And I think if people just take a look, go beyond personality, just take a look at the issues that Clinton is running on, the issues that Trump is running on. Clinton believes we should raise the minimum wage to a living wage. Trump does not. Clinton believes that climate change is real and that we've got to transform our energy system. Trump does not. Trump wants to give, at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, huge tax breaks to billionaires. Clinton wants the rich to start paying their fair share of taxes. So the differences, I think, are very clear. And even if you have a difference of opinion with Clinton on this, or you don't like her, I think the stakes are so high at this moment in American history that it's imperative that we defeat Trump and that we elect Hillary Clinton. And I intend to do everything I can to make that happen.
Whether it's a program for affordable higher education or one of the items on your agenda that you talked a lot about, improving the infrastructure.
Absolutely.
Where does the money come from?
Well, I'll tell you where the money comes from. Josh, in the last 16 years, we have seen a tenfold increase in the number of billionaires in this country. Tenfold. We've gone from 51 billionaires to 540 billionaires. And yet you have people like Warren Buffett, one of the richest people in this country, tell us that he pays an effective tax rate that's higher than his secretary. So we have a tax system which Donald Trump, among others, has exploited. He's proud that he doesn't pay anything in taxes, despite the fact that he's a billionaire. So I think it is time to tell the wealthiest people and the largest corporations, sorry, you are going to have to start paying your fair share of taxes. So, among many other things, we can make public colleges and universities tuition-free for the middle class of this country.
On the debate, did you learn anything that you may not have known or suspected about Donald Trump, or Hillary Clinton for that matter?
Well, I was glad to see Clinton start right out in attacking Trump's view of trickle-down economics. Look, we've been through that in our history. Giving tax breaks to billionaires and large corporations does not create jobs, does not trickle down to the middle class and working families. It makes the very rich and large corporations even richer. Clinton is right, Trump is wrong. And when Trump gets up there and says proudly, oh, I don't pay any taxes, I'm a billionaire, I don't pay any taxes, wow. That is not what this country should be about. Billionaires are going to have to start paying their fair share of taxes so that we rebuild our infrastructure, so that we make public colleges and universities tuition free, so that we deal with the disgrace of having the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth.
How does Hillary Clinton overcome the trust issues that she faces here in New Hampshire. Before you got out of this race, she was polled as the least trustworthy candidate in the entire field, while you were the #1 trustworthy candidate, according to New Hampshire voters. How does she overcome that? Because it is a problem.
I think what she has got to say as straightforwardly and clearly as she can. Look, if I am elected president, Hillary Clinton, within the first 100 days, this is what is going to happen. We are going to invest $1 trillion to rebuild our infrastructure and create millions of decent paying jobs. We are going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. We are going to make public colleges and universities tuition free. Write it down. That's what I'm saying. And it will happen in the first 100 days. Now, I'm saying that. She is not. But I think she has got to come forward and be as clear as she can and outline an agenda that works for the middle class and working families of this country and tells the billionaire class and Wall Street that they cannot have it all.
Does she have some healing to do when it comes to winning some trust back?
I think I'm not going to speak to that. I mean, that's what she'll have to deal with that. But I think the best way to do it is just to make it clear. You don't have to be in love with a candidate. What that candidate has got to do is deliver for the middle class and working class of this country. That's what we need right now. And I think she has got to be as clear as she can be. A, B, C, D. This is what I'm doing for your family. You can't afford childcare, we're going to address this. You're tired of going over potholes and seeing people unemployed, we're going to rebuild the infrastructure and create jobs. You're tired of working for $10 an hour, we're going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. She's got to be as clear as she can, put it in writing, and at the end of 100 days, that's what we've got to accomplish.
When you got behind Hillary Clinton and announced that you were behind her and you were going to work as hard as you could, do whatever you could to get her elected. In fact, that's what you said here in New Hampshire in the first public scene together. The decision itself, though, fair to say it was tough to make?
Look, I mean, obviously, I and hundreds of thousands of my supporters worked very, very hard trying to get the nomination for Bernie Sanders. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it wasn't a disappointment. We came much, much further. You were one of the first people I talked to on the campaign. When we began, it's fair to say, you, most of the other media people, didn't think we had a chance in the world to do, as well as we did.
Did you think you had a chance in the world to do as well?
As a matter of fact, I did think we had a chance. I wasn't sure that we could, but I did think we had a chance. But anyway, we went a lot further than people thought. So it was a disappointment. We went so far, we just didn't, get the gold ring. But right now, either Clinton or Trump is going to become president. I think, as I've said many times, Trump would be a disaster for this country. I will do everything I can to see that he's defeated and that Hillary is elected.
What does November 9th and the days beyond hold for Senator Bernie Sanders?
What I have said many times is politics doesn't end on Election Day, and this is a very important point. If Clinton wins or she loses, you can't sit back and say, well, I did what I did. What we have got to do is rally millions of people to stand up and make the difficult fight to demand that we have a government that represents all of us and not just the 1%. And electing Hillary Clinton is a step in that direction, but by no means the final passage. We have got to rally the American people to stand up to Wall Street, to stand up to the drug companies, to stand up to very, very powerful people in Washington whose greed, in my view, is destroying this country.
Senator Sanders, it has been a pleasure.
Nice.
Throughout the entire campaign. Best of luck.
Thank you very much, Josh.
Good to see you.
And we'll be right back with a little Q&A with Donald Trump.